When something comes up where a product or service is found to have something dangerous associated with it, sometimes the danger is real, but in many cases it's not. Yet fearmongers will incite people to boycott and stop supporting services and buying goods because of one action or another by the providers of said item. Even if it's not as dangerous as it is advertised, there will always be those who believe these are confounding conspiracies. In the world, there are certain individuals who have to watch how much sugar and sweet things they eat. These people, diabetics mostly, can eat the sweet things but have to mitigate their consumption, but that's another matter entirely. In trying to help out, some had uncovered artificial sweeteners. While one of these non-sucrose sweeteners isn't that new, sucralose has been out on the market for years, only recently called Splenda. There's the whole stevia plant thing that I haven't found much on, which might be interesting. And then there's the infamous saccharin, the only sweetener that was truly proven to be a carcinogen. And then there's the one we're going to focus on for this video. So what's the real health concerns regarding aspartame? What sort of dangers can be present that we weren't initially told of? What other common items found in foods can be mistaken for some of the symptoms? Be ready to see something shocking. Grab yourself a diet soda, sit back, relax, and let's get started. When saccharin first came out, it was pretty much acknowledged that it was a real danger to health. As a result, some wanted to find a sweetener that didn't have any health dangers. It was in 1965 that some scientists, experimenting with a way to get something to work, found that linking two amino acids, namely phenylalanine, I think, and aspartic acid, I think, when linked together, not only incites the taste of sweet, but it also is 160 times sweeter than sugar. This was actually during the time when science was beginning to really understand what it was they were studying. The space race was on and some darker things were happening. I'll let you research those on your own. Getting back on subject. In 1981, NutraSweet was introduced, and over time the dangerous sweetener, saccharin, slowly trickled away from the market. And there's no wonder why. After all, it became apparent that saccharin and aspartame were two very different types of sweetener, and I'll show you why. You may not know this, but aspartame actually has a purpose in our biology. In order to understand this, I have to tell you a little bit about cellular biology. As you probably know, every cell in our bodies have remarkable complexity that allows it to survive and to work and to do what we need it to do in order to help us continue to survive. It's the reason we eat what we eat and drink what we drink. In the nucleus of our cells, there's a very interesting and telling molecule, one that we have inside that helps us to become who we are by giving us the means to life. This molecule, DNA, aside from creating new and replacement cells and giving us our hair, eye, and skin color and all the other things that is our nature, is also very important to the survival of each cell. The DNA molecule also helps create the proteins that allows each of us to continue. But here's the fun part. Each protein molecule is branched on one side by vitamins that we can consume either in our meals or by vitamin pills. The other side is capped with an amino acid. We consume these amino acids with our food in pill form as well, and you probably know something about aminos since it was a major plot point in the movie Jurassic Park, and that the idea of cutting off the supply of a certain amino, namely lysine, would end up killing those things. It was Samuel L. Jackson that told us about it. But in the biology of it, these two amino acids can be used either together or apart. It helps us to live. But that doesn't stop. Admittedly, one of the aminos that make up aspartame is knowingly and acknowledged by some people that are actually allergic to. It's phenylalanine. That's going to be fun to say. That's why there's a warning on it. But some people decide they want to know more. Some are convinced that they are suffering from aspartame poisoning despite the biological certainty of it. They are convinced that they are being slowly killed by something that evidence shows, as I listed earlier and in this section, is completely harmless. Now here's what nobody wants to look at. I have heard a lot of the so-called symptoms of so-called aspartame poisoning, things like restlessness, irritability, and quite a few other symptoms that are something else entirely. I personally find it interesting that there are a number of aspartame sweetened products that also have one other interesting ingredient that would make it all make sense. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it is a fact that in restaurants with fountain drinks, the only diet drink offered is often one of the products that also has caffeine in it. In fact, it's even more rare that the diet drinks all have caffeine in them. So why does that matter? Take a look at the facts about caffeine. Tension, restlessness, staying awake, over-energized. I could go on from there. But it makes a pretty interesting argument that what these people are suffering from isn't aspartame poisoning. Here's where the idea that it's caffeine and not aspartame is causing all the issues. As I showed earlier, the aspartame usage is way less than the use of its being made with sugar. In fact, there have been multiple tests to show that, like I mentioned in the very first Confounding Conspiracies video, the needed dosage that causes danger is completely ridiculous amount. What's more, this is where I will earn some points. The daily recommended allowance for caffeine, the amount that's listed as the safe amount is 300 milliliters. It's the same as the amount of caffeine in a 9-ounce cup of black coffee. Yet, we still consume way more than that. We try to convince ourselves that it's something we need, but is it? Why would we want to go after what is essentially a sweetener that our body can actually use because of the ingredients in it, and not go after caffeine? Really, how much caffeine do we knowingly consume that causes us to begin to react to things like that? Think of it. We go after one thing but ignore the other. We do this because we are convinced how much we need caffeine to stay awake, so instead of trying to limit our use of it, we go after something else. The truth about caffeine is that it is a drug, a stimulant that is out there more than any other, including alcohol. We're convinced that this little thing is a necessary ingredient to help us live better and survive more, knowingly consuming a drug that is, genetically speaking, close to cocaine and heroin. Now, I'm not trying to talk you out of using it. I sometimes use it myself, but I've cut my use of it because I want to keep my heart as healthy as possible. It doesn't take a 2-liter bottle a day to stay awake, though. Neither does it take more than a small amount, like the 20-ounce. And there are those that also help out. Using this bit of knowledge, I know there will be those that find it offensive, even aggravating, that I'm trying to say an artificial sweetener is being reported as causing the same symptoms of too much caffeine. Believe me, I understand. I'm not here to try and convince you that I'm right. It's only what the evidence suggests. I may be totally wrong, but I've seen enough to know that caffeine overdosing does. There have been more and more than a few deaths related to caffeine, although the dosage is considerably high. I am trying to say that we can mitigate the damage effects from these things. It doesn't have to be so bad. Moderation is a way to think about this and all the other things that we eat and do. That's it. I hope I've given you some things to think about and that I've introduced some other ideas. As usual, give the video a like, leave a comment below, and I'll look in on them, and subscribe up here. Check out the links in the description, of course, and over here on my social media accounts I do check in on, and we'll see y'all next time.